Okay, so we were having this conversation on Twitter Spaces last night. It was really interesting to me, so I figured I would bring it over here. So basically, we were kind of talking about the death of the compilation album and why we don't really need it anymore in the age of streaming, and a lot of things that kind of tie into that. So, first up, we have Christina Aguilera's compilation album. This was released after she only did like 4 or 5 albums. Like, she released this, I believe, in like 2008, and you're not even in the industry for a decade and we're already getting a compilation album. Like, this is way too premature. And she did have a bunch of hits around at the time. She did give a couple new songs to see where she was going and everything, but I just feel like you need a little bit more time before you do it and everything. And we were kind of talking about like, well, why would you release it this early and everything? And I was saying maybe the label releases it when an artist is so popular because they want to kind of cash off of that momentum and sell a lot of records at that point. But then we were like, when do you think is the appropriate point to release one? So for me, I think you should do it when a lot of artists' best work is behind them. I'm talking like 15, 20 years in the game. Then I think it's a lot more appropriate and everything. And whenever they show that they have longevity, why would you do a greatest hits album if no one's going to remember who you are 10, 15 years? So that's my opinion there. And it's no shade to her or anything like that. And I don't know if it was her decision or more of a label decision. I think a lot of times it more so is a label decision, but that's kind of there. And then I want to talk about some other compilation albums. Another example of way too premature for a compilation album, greatest hits, is Mariah Carey number ones. Now, the label was the one who was really gunning for this because she really was not trying to do all that because she was like, I haven't really been in the industry for that long. Like, I still have so much more ahead of me. But she was trying to get out of her contract with Columbia at the time because Tommy Mottola and all that. And so she basically agreed that she would do it. But she was saying, like, I felt like they were trying to sew her up with the 90s and it just felt too early. That's what she said. Like, this is not greatest hits. It's just a thank you to the fans. And she did give a couple extra songs for the fans to listen to and appreciate, like I Still Believe. She also had the duet with Whitney Houston as well. So, it got a couple of treats in there. But, even she felt like it was too early. She would go on to release Number One to Infinity in 2015. And I think that this was the right time for her because she had already been in the industry for 25 years at that point. So I think it makes a lot of sense for her to do it then. She had 18 number one hits at this point, and All I Want still not gone number one, which was crazy. So this kind of outdated. And she did give us Infinity. So it makes sense for her to release it at this time. Janet Jackson releasing Design of the Decade in 1996. Yeah, again, I don't get it. I don't get it. Because literally, they're going 86 to 96. So they're just completely ignoring the two albums, which honestly you should because, people don't really care about those anyways. I mean, the hits on there were kind of moderate. But at the same time, she still hadn't done the Velvet Rope yet, which housed Together Again, which is one of her biggest hits. You also have I Get Lonely off of that album. So, you have those two. And then not to mention that you literally have All For You, have a smash hit All For You, had Doesn't Really Matter on that album as well. So you should have waited till All For You to release it, because then 2001, then, 15 years in the game, you don't count the first two albums. So this was very premature, though we did get 24 Play and we did get Runaway, which was like the highest debut for a female artist before Mariah came out with Fantasy. I think it was like number 6 on the Billboard chart. So, there's that. And then again, Janet would release another compilation album, number ones, in 2009. And again, this makes a lot more sense considering, where she was at that point in her career. She just came off of Discipline, which did have the hit feedback. So, then it's an appropriate time, in my opinion. celinedion released hers in 1999. And so, again, I was like, this is too soon. But then my friends were like, oh, she already had a fair amount of hits by this point. And then you also have to remember she was doing the music in French as well. So I guess that's part of it. And so, she had Power of Love. She had that song from Beauty and the Beast, All By Myself, It's All Coming Back to Me Now, among other hits. So I guess it kind of makes sense for her. And then I believe, around this time is when she wanted to take a break and, and do a live with her husband and stuff like that. I believe he had cancer or something like that. And then she would come back with her next album. So, I mean, I guess I get it in that respect. I think she probably could have waited a little bit longer, yes. But I think sometimes they also release it because, the artist is on the break. They want to keep the fans fed. So, like, here, it's something you already know and you like, and let me give you a couple new songs to kind of top that off. And then the last one I'll talk about today, The Weeknd. I just feel like, why is The Weeknd releasing it? I just feel like, again, it's too premature. He's been in the game since like 2010, 2011 with like the mixtapes and stuff like that. I'm aware of that. And he released this whenever he did the Super Bowl, which was 2020. So that's right after he released After Hours, which had Blinding Lights and, Heartless and like some big hits for him. So I guess, you sell a lot of records like I was kind of talking about earlier. But again, like, I just feel like you should have waited a little bit longer because he's at the height of his career. I'm sure that he'll have more hits. So again, it just really felt way too premature in my personal opinion. So basically, now let's get to the part where I kind of talk about why the greatest hits is not really necessary. One, I think a lot of these new artists really aren't going to have longevity. I think if you ask some people who are they in like 5 or 10 years, people aren't going to know. A lot of times people just kind of come out and they fizzle out now because they don't really care about having a career. They don't want to put in the work to have a career. The record labels aren't doing what's necessary in terms of promotion of the artist and really putting the money into the project in the first place for it to succeed. And so a lot of these new artists aren't having longevity. So it kind of doesn't really make sense for greatest hits in that respect. And then my friend was basically saying, in the era that we're in now of streaming and everything, it's basically a playlist. Like whenever on Spotify, for example, if you have like this is Christina Aguilera, that is the greatest hits. A lot of people aren't really buying physical CDs anymore. Therefore, it kind of doesn't make as much sense to do a greatest hits. And then another reason is because I think a lot of these new hits aren't really tangible hits. Like whenever you used to have a hit, like it stuck like grits. Like people knew it all over the world. You were on Billboard for a very long time, and it just became a staple in your catalog. Now the hits are not the same. You might have a hit for a month or two, and then boom, you're off the chart. A week or two, and then boom, you fall off the chart. A lot of people are debuting at number one, and then a couple weeks later, they're at number 87 because the music isn't sticking around long enough for whatever reason. The music industry just feels like fast food, as people said at this point. People release something, they forget about it, people aren't holding on to it, and I think the quality of the music now has really suffered. Not to say there's not a lot of great music out now. Of course there is. I love SZA. I love Olivia Rodrigo for sure. There's some of my favorite like contemporary artists that are coming out now. We'll have to see about their longevity and how that kind of factors into everything. But yeah, music industry is just not the same as it once was, and I just feel the need for a compilation or greatest hits album is just lessening and lessening. And, that's kind of my thoughts there. But, there are great things about, these albums. They help people get into new artists all the time, and they're kind of introducing them to songs that they wouldn't have really known otherwise sometimes or whatever. Maybe you weren't alive at the time. Maybe it wasn't popular in your country at the time. And they're really great for, kind of discovering that point. They're great for style standpoint and stuff like that. But I don't know. We'll see how the compilation album ages. But I definitely agree that it's not really necessary. But let me know down below in the comments, what are your favorite compilation albums and why? Do you still really listen to them? And let me know all these things. I mean, if you're one of my favorite artists, I don't really listen to the compilation album. I'm just going to listen to the actual album, and there's that. And if I do, I'll just like listen to the songs you made for that album. I'm not going to be listening to, a song that's already on your other album. But that's my opinion. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and also give me any other insight that I might have missed.